If you are one of the 2 or 3 people that happen to follow my various online exploits, then you might remember that Resident Evil 2 was my favorite video game last year. Either way, you can understand when I say I was elated to learn that the next game in the series, Resident Evil 3, would also be receiving a remake treatment. But for reasons ranging from a busted PS4 hard drive to pure laziness, I didn't manage to play the game after I released back in April, until I'd finally gotten my hands on the PC version this past weekend. Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here, and today I'm reviewing the survival horror video game, Resident Evil 3. Let's start with a little background for the uninitiated among us. Resident Evil 3 is a full-blown remake of the 1999 Capcom video game, much in the same way that last year's Resident Evil 2 was a remake of the 1998 game. Gone are the fixed camera angles and tank controls for which those earlier games were known, replaced instead by a third-person over-the-shoulder perspective, first introduced to the series in the brilliant Resident Evil 4. Much like in the 1999 game, this one takes place before and after the events of the previous game, so expect to revisit some of the same locations in and around the fictional Raccoon City. Set in the middle of a virus outbreak that has turned most of its population to mindless zombies, you play as Jill Valentine, a police officer trying to escape. But her escape is made exponentially more difficult by the relentless Nemesis, a biological weapon that has been programmed to hunt down police officers like herself. Thankfully, she is helped by a mercenary named Carlos, whose team has been sent there to evacuate as many survivors as possible. Now they must both work together to escape the city before it is too late. One of the things that struck me while playing the Resident Evil 2 remake last year was its overhauled visuals, and this follow-up game manages to take things up a notch. The character models were lifelike and expressive enough that I had to remind myself it was just a video game. I especially loved watching the zombies as they shambled around the many dark corridors, and the detailed gore effects that can be seen as they pump them full of bullets never fail to amaze. The environments were likewise beautifully rendered, and the whole thing ran reasonably well on my mid-range gaming PC. The sound design is also worthy of note, adding to that sense of dread I felt as I slowly explored the various locations in anticipation of the various monstrosities waiting to attack. The locations themselves were varied, even though several of them, like the police station, were being reused from the previous game. The level design also tended to make the whole thing feel a lot more claustrophobic than first appearances led me to believe. Another facet of the previous game I'd loved was the trenchcoat wearing baddie, Mr. X, who has been replaced here with the even more formidable Nemesis. But unlike Mr. X from the previous game, whose footsteps could be distinctly heard as he hunted you around the police station, my encounters with Nemesis always tended to be scripted. This gave most of those encounters a more cinematic flair, but I never had that feeling of not knowing if it'd corner me at any moment as a result. Which is ironic, because that was one of the very things I remembered most fondly about the 1999 original, being stalked from room to room. There had been numerous complaints about Resident Evil 3's comparatively shorter length and breakneck pacing, but I never really had a problem with either of those things. It should be noted that I'd taken more of a leisurely approach while playing though, spending as much time as I needed in each location, so that by the time the credits rolled, I had spent just over 8 hours to beat the game. This felt like the right length for a game of this nature in my opinion, but I can also understand why others might want it to be a bit longer than that. Overall, Resident Evil 3 is an adequate follow-up to Resident Evil 2. It might feel like more of an expansion than a full-on sequel, but at least it offers more of the same solid gameplay and thrills that made the last game so great to play. I'll give the game an 8 out of 10. Have you had a chance to play Resident Evil 3? What did you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more reviews like this one. And until the next one, this is Michael signing off.